You're welcome to. I just noticed he wasn't here, so I was gonna spot Phil.
I'm sorry. Did you want to do something?
I was gonna get it started, but play us along.
Okay, I'll play this one.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. If you looked at the schedule, I am not Tim. I am just playing Tim. Glad to have you all here. It's a beautiful morning today. A little chilly, but it's a pretty day. Any announcements?
Office hours are Wednesday 3 to 5. Emerging Friends Camp, 6th to 12th grade. The flyer is on the back on the poster board back there. Toddler bags are new and on the hooks, so if you have a young child, you're welcome to grab one of those and use it to.
Or if you're an old child, I picked one up and it was
That's
kind of interesting too.
There's some
Fidgets in there, yes, it's kind of handy. Any other announcements?
Bible study is going to be just the afternoon of Sunday the 14th.
Bible study.
Bible school.
Oh, okay.
Bible school.
Bible school is June.
June 14th.
Okay.
Just that Sunday afternoon, I think from 1 to 5 is what we said. So
Okay.
kids, usually we say 4 at the youngest through, if they still want to come, they're more than welcome.
Okay. Through whatever age. And hopefully you have some over 20 who want to help you with this. Yes. Do we have any birthdays? Anybody having a birthday or, oh, lots of money here. Woohoo. Get this going.
I took a loan out.
Did you? Shall I count? That's okay. I won't.
One more coin
One more coin
down
and
here in the bottom.
another quarter. Many happy returns of the day of your birth. May sunshine and gladness be given, and may the dear Father prepare you on earth for a beautiful birthday in heaven. I counted, so if you want to know, you can ask me later. But it's still. Yeah, yes, you can. Might as well admit it. Anybody have a song of choice? Is that where we're at now?
I do.
What do you have? Oh, you
I
would
would
be
really like to do 779.
779. Oh, I like this. Some dark mornings when this life is over, far away, to our time where God says us shall shore, oh, fly away, oh, fly away, oh, Gloria, fly away. says higher than C, high C. I can't get there. Would you all join hands and welcome everyone here this morning? Oh, there's Amelia. Good morning. Oh, Amelia's got her bag. What? 334? 834.
384.
My hearing's going, obviously. 384. Turn to page 384. Satisfy oh Jesus, come and fill your land. That's 2 for 2. That's another good one. Thank you. Now it's time for our sharing and prayer requests.
Remember Kerry Ames in our community. He's been diagnosed with leukemia and is in the hospital and has a long journey ahead of him. He's known by a lot of people and beloved, and he's really got a struggle.
Carrie Ames.
Kerry Ames.
Okay. I don't know if any of you know Beth Ann Masaru, but she's had several health problems. She's had an artificial eye implanted, or is getting ready to have it implanted, and she has spinal stimulus. It's going to be tried on her back to see if it can eliminate some of her pain. If not, she's going to have surgery, and that's a pretty bad one. Who? Neely? And we'll continue to pray for Jay and Gary Sutton in their healing and all the family.
World leaders, first responders, policemen, that group.
Anyone else?
The Brock family.
Brock's?
There's a lady I used to work with.
Oh.
Her son is in college up in the UP, and this winter coming home in the middle of a blizzard. He caught hypothermia, fell into the frozen lake, and that was 2 months ago probably. It was, there's 30 inches of snow or something blowing. They just found his body in
Oh.
the lake, yes, a couple days ago or something.
That's tragic. If there's nothing else, let's go to prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, as we do come to you today, we know that you're in control, and we have to allow you to be in control instead of trying to control our own lives. We also want to especially pray for the people who have unspoken prayers today, as well as those who have reached out to ask for prayers for the Carrie Ames family and the Neely family, the Sutton family, and the Brock family. Having a loss in the family is not easy, but it's inevitable. And we have to realize that you're in control and you will help us all through it. But we also want to lift up Beth Ann Masaru, our world leaders, our first responders, our healthcare, our teachers. Give them all strength to continue doing their job and helping each of us when we're in need. Amen. I'm unaware, Sharon is our sharing time person today. when I suggested to her, she said, I got it written down and I know what I'm going to talk about this time.
Well, at that stage of the game, Suzanne, I had a whole nother program figured out. I'm going to save it for later. Because in the meantime, I get this book that I'd ordered about 8 weeks ago. It says, Getting Old Ain't for Wimps. Believe me, I'll go along with that, by Karen O'Connor. I'm going to shorten some of these little stories. And then I'm going to give you a personal comment at the end of each one. The first one says, I do dance, just ask me. Well, I'm going to put it this way, I don't dance. And don't ask, because you're going to pay for it. My ex found out the hard way on that a few times when I stomped on his foot every few minutes. I am one of those people with the left foot problem that I have anyway. If I don't see where I'm putting it down, it's not stable. And I could land it any place. So he found out the hard way. Like I said, I stomped all over his feet a few times, and I finally went back and sat down myself. The next story is about boot up. And anybody that's had to wear a blankety-blank boot, those hard plastic ones, on your foot, knows what this is all about. This lady had got up in the middle of the night, and when she went back to bed, she had to put her boot on. She kept hearing this squeaky, squishy noise, and it scared the bejesus out of her. And she really was ready to get up or wake her husband up and check it out, but she managed to get back to sleep, real good sleep. She got up in the morning and found out that she had put the Velcro back together wrong. Well, having worn a boot for 2 months, that happened to me more than once. The only thing of it is, when I wore the boot, I had to use a walker to even get around the apartment because I didn't have the oomph to do it. I had to do it because I had to put my foot down and go like this with it. And that's tricky when you're using a boot and a walker. Anyway, the last story is about homework rebate. And this lady tells the story that she was babysitting for her grandson, and he was in about the 3rd grade. And she was a great coupon cutter. And she especially liked the ones the rebate with the back to the store, where she could take them right back to the store. And one day she was helping her son with his homework. And she began to realize that her penchant for saving money was really influencing him too. Well, anyway, one afternoon he was doing his homework, and she had noticed that he did not put the current date on any of his papers. And she asked him why. I don't want them to expire, he said. Now, last time I was here about 2 weeks ago, I was telling Chris about the time that my mother tried to give my daughter a $5 bill to put in the collection plate. My daughter was going, no, She refused to do it. Finally, Mother took the money away from her, put it in a plate, and practically threw the plate onto the next person. Well, about that time, the music stops. My daughter clearly announces, I want my money back. Needless to say, my mother turned beet red, and the entire church chuckled and snickered at what had happened. Well, I'm going to tell you another little story about coupons. One time, my mother and Dad were going to be watching my daughter while my ex and I went out for the evening. And when I got back to pick her up, Mom was madder than a wet hen. I did not know it, but come to find out, She had cleaned out her coupons the night before and got rid of all the expired ones. Well, Rita walks by, and Mom looks at her and says, Rita, you want these? Sure. Okay, you can about guarantee what happened, but Dave Wicker got in on this one. The next morning after Sunday school, they figured out which kid had done it. He brings the coupons back out to Mom and says, Dean, do you want these back? Well, about that time, Mother turned beet red again. And she took them and said, just looked at David and says, throw them away. Like I said, by the time I got home, Mother was battered a wet head, and here I am trying to placate my mother, get her calmed down, and figure out a way to tell my daughter that giving coupons in the collection is not what you're supposed to do. I did have a brainstorm that day, and I looked at Rita and I said, Rita, I'm sorry to say, but Jesus can't use coupons in heaven. And don't ever do that again. Okay, that was her normal. I have a little Bible verse that I'm also going to change. It's all your sons, and I'm going to put daughters, will be taught by the Lord, and great will be your children's peace. And by the way, I'm not happy that I'm turning 8. It's just one more year I've lived with in pain.
Thank you, Sharon. My daughter is not a morning person. She wasn't when she's young. She is very much still not a morning person. When she was little, toddler age, I was a preschool teacher for a little while, and then there was a little while where I worked as a camp director, and in both cases I was required to open the place. At the camp, I had to be there for everybody when they were first arriving. At the daycare or the preschool, I had to be there to open the doors. So we were always there very, very early in the morning. And I was blessed to be able to take her with me to work. I'm not so sure that she agreed that that was a blessing, but it was a nice perk to not have to pay for childcare during the day, but to be able to bring my own kid with me. It was good. However, because she's not a morning person, she was impossible to wake up. I mean, really impossible to wake up. When I finally got her ready, after struggling to get her to move at all, it was like this expanding chore that just kept growing. I would set the clock a little bit earlier, thinking, okay, well, yesterday we didn't get there on time, so let me set the clock a little earlier. And then she'd take up all that time and set it a little earlier, and she'd take up all that time. It didn't matter how early I set the clock. She always expanded whatever there was to do in the morning to eat up every second there was, so that I was rushing to work by the time I got there. Many people have shared with me a similar observation with their children. It seems that children just know how to expand their needs to take up whatever time you have, whatever energy you might have. But it's not just with kids. This happens everywhere. There was a recent retiree that was sharing with me how they thought they were finally going to get some rest now that they were retired. However, they find that now is the time when they're busier than ever. How does that happen? One lady who was telling me about this shared with me exactly how it happened. She says in detail how sending a postcard took her a whole day. 30 minutes to the store, an hour finding the right card, 30 minutes back, another hour to find her glasses because she lost those, a little over an hour selecting just the right writing utensil and starting on the card. And by this point, she still hasn't gotten to the post office to put it back or found a stamp or talked to the mail person who was super chatty. Anyway, by the time she finally gets home from all of this, the day is gone. She lost the whole day to a task that normally would have taken her just 3 minutes before she retired. How does that happen? And maybe you think that this is just a problem for the young or the old. No. The same thing happens at work with all of us. There's a naval historian named Parkinson who was studying work habits. And he identified this thing that is now lovingly called Parkinson's Law. He words it like this: work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion. Efficiency gurus in the business world now are suggesting that we should schedule our meetings to be just a little shorter. If you normally have an hour-long meeting, that on the calendar you need to shift it to be 50 minutes because you'll get the same amount done, but you'll have that extra 10 minutes at the end. It won't cost you anything. I've seen this in staff meetings myself. I can schedule it for 20 minutes or I can schedule it for an hour, and the same amount of work happens in that time no matter what I schedule for it. Something funny is happening with time. We think it's so static, but it seems to expand and contract with what needs doing. The Greeks had 2 words for time. They had one word they called chronos and another that they called kairos. Chronos time is measurable. It's linear. You can track it on your watch in seconds and minutes and hours. You can track it on your calendar with days and months and years. But Kairos time is different. You can't track it the same way. It's more about the quality of time than the linear measurement. It's about what type of moment is this. Let me give you a couple of examples. Microwave popcorn. It takes a little over 2 minutes to cook, but you can't walk away. You have to stay there because the instructions aren't a simple put 2 minutes on the clock and then walk away. You can't do that. You have to listen for, there has to be the pop sounds start happening, and you have to wait until they space out just right. And so you have to sit there for the whole 2 minutes or 3 minutes or 4 minutes or however long it supposedly takes. Anybody here do microwave popcorn? I see nods. All right. I don't know if this happens to you. This is my experience with microwave popcorn. I put the popcorn in and I start the timer. And I wait. And I wait for that sound of the first pop. And it's got to come quick because the timer thing is only supposed to take up to like 3 minutes for the whole thing. And I wait for that first pop, and I wait for that first pop, and it seems to never come. And I start to wonder, I have these thoughts in my head that kind of cycle through. Did the popcorn go bad? How old is this popcorn? Should I check the box? I walk over to the cabinet and see, like, is there a bad date on this? Is there a Best Buy date? What's going on? How does all of that happen before the minute that it's probably supposed to take for this thing to finish popping? I don't understand. Does popcorn even go bad? I don't know. How does this happen with time? It's just a couple of minutes, but it seems to take forever. The microwave is tracking chronos time. It's ticking down. It is measurable. It's linear. We know exactly how many minutes have passed based on what that microwave says. That's chronos time. The forever that's happening in my body and my experience, that is kairos time. This is the difference, chronos versus kairos. My daughter turns 26. Here's another example. Occasionally, I will run across pictures. Facebook is great about this. It'll feed you a picture that says, do you remember this from 30 years ago? And I run across the picture from when she's a toddler. And I have that moment of like, oh, I remember that. This is so sweet. And it's those days when she was at the camp or she was at daycare with me. And it feels like it was just yesterday. I look at that and I'm like, I remember that so clearly. Where did all that time go? 26 years? She has her own kids now. How did that happen? In Chronos time, she's 26 years old. I can track it on the calendar. It's measurable. It's linear. In Kairos time, that was nothing. It was just a minute, and it was gone. Time is weird. It's so weird. Waiting on popcorn that only takes a minute or 2 minutes, that's forever. 26 years of my daughter's life, gone. It's weird. We're going to be in Isaiah 51 today, and we're going to look at time, and I'm going to ask you to look at time a little differently. Prophets like Isaiah, they were speaking for God to the people. And you've probably heard the scripture before. God's time is not like our time. God's time is different. I think what happens here is that God spends most of his time in Kairos time, occasionally stepping into Chronos time for special occasions like the incarnation of Christ. On the other hand, we spend most of our time stuck in Chronos time, and only occasionally on special occasions will step into Kairos time. We can both be in either, but we spend most of our time in the opposite end of the spectrum. And so it's hard to understand God's time because God is using Kairos time. So before we jump into the text itself of Isaiah 51, I just want to give you a little bit of background about what we're looking at. Isaiah was a prophet. Today we often hear that word and we think of a fortune teller, somebody who's telling the future. But in ancient Israel, that's not what a prophet meant. That's not what they meant by the title prophet. A prophet was first and foremost speaking into the current situation, whatever was happening right then and there. They were the mouthpiece of God. They were speaking to the people on behalf of God. Those situations for which they spoke often were not good ones. The people of Israel had been living under constant threat. There were empires that were rising and falling all around them. They were in the middle of this place that was just full of turmoil. And eventually, these empires that were rising and falling around them started to come for them because they had a nice old piece of land. Let's get that. And so they come for the Israelites. One such empire who did this was the Assyrians. The Assyrians swept through the land with their army. And when they came, they didn't just win a few battles. They took everything and they leveled everything on the way. They destroyed cities. They tore down walls. The orchards, they burned up. The gardens that they found, they ripped into pieces and pulled every single plant up. What had once been life-giving land became wasteland because they tore everything out that was full of life. That was just the land. They had this strategy for people that was unique too. They would take people and they would separate the families and they would separate and divide the communities. They would deport people not as a one-time event. It was a strategy. They would over and over again take people from one place and move them to another place so that they were with a bunch of strangers so that people wouldn't rise up. And then they would take them and move them again and break them into pieces and move them all over the place so that they lost their cultural identity. This is how Assyria kept so much property, so much land under their control, is they made people lose their cultures. This went on for decades. So when Isaiah speaks, he's speaking to a people like this. It's not a people who are in a minor inconvenience. He's speaking into people who are exhausted, people who are disoriented because they don't know where they are. They've been moved around. He's speaking into a people who believe have every reason to believe that everything that they once had, their home, all of it's lost and it's gone forever. I mean, it was ripped up. How is it ever going to come back again? And so then in Isaiah 51:3, you'll find this. For the Lord will comfort Zion. Zion is Israel. It's just another name they use in the Old Testament for Israel. For the Lord will comfort Zion. He will comfort all her waste places and will make her wilderness like Eden, her desert like the garden of the Lord. Joy and gladness will be found in her, thanksgiving and the voice of song. A garden? Here? In the place that has literally been burned to the ground. Do you know how hard it is to grow a garden where the ground has recently been burned? It's near impossible. Joy and gladness in a people who have been scattered all over the place. This is crazy. This is crazy talk. Just a few verses later in 51:5, I will bring near my deliverance swiftly. My salvation has gone out, and my arms will rule the peoples. The coastlands wait for me, and for my arm they hope. Swiftly? From a chronos perspective, nothing about this happened swiftly. The destruction took years. It wasn't a short process for that to happen, to tear up the gardens and to level everything. And then the exile itself lasted for decades. Everything that they could see, everything that they could measure says the same thing. This is not getting better, and these statements from this prophet are not true. This is a lie. And yet Isaiah speaks anyway. He speaks of restoration, not that's just possible, but is already on the way and swiftly coming. I think Isaiah is inviting people into a perspective shift. The circumstances are not going to change. In fact, they were there in Chronos time for 70 years. Later on in the book of Isaiah, he even calls that out, specifically tells them, you're going to be in exile for 70 years. That is not swiftly. The land was still destroyed that whole time. The people were still scattered. Isaiah 51:6, he says this, lift up your eyes to the heavens and look at the earth beneath, for the heavens will vanish like smoke. The earth will wear out like a garment, and those who live on it will die like gnats, but my salvation will be forever, and my deliverance will never be ended. He's inviting a perspective shift here, a zoom out. Lift up your eyes to heaven, look at the earth beneath. This is like you're floating up above the earth and you're looking down. And everything will vanish like smoke. This is similar to what we've been reading in Ecclesiastes in our Bible study in the morning, that there's this sense of how temporary everything is. And Isaiah is inviting them to recognize that this thing that feels so permanent, the gardens that got ripped up, their homes that were leveled, there's no stones left, the temple is gone. Isaiah is saying, this is temporary. This is temporary. Jennifer Yackham put it this way. She said, God's deliverance isn't about the time measured by sundials and calendars, what the Greeks called chronos time. It's about God's time, kairos. Chronos is where garments wear out and gnats annoy the goats. Kairos is dwelling in awareness of the eternal presence of God. Chronos is the clock on the wall, the news feed, the due dates and deadlines. And kairos is the hoot of laughter, the surprise of poetry, the embrace of a child. Chronos and kairos are not separate worlds. They're both happening at the same time. That popcorn is popping by chronos time, and I am experiencing it as forever at the same time. They exist in the same time, in the same place. The question is not which one's real. They're both real. The question is, which one are you paying attention to? Are you always watching the clock? I think this is why Isaiah's message matters so much to us. He focuses on hope. He tells us to look at the part of Kairos that is God's kingdom breaking into this world today. That if you look at it, it's there. In Chronos time, hope seems unnecessary at best and foolish at worst. When the land is gone and the people are scattered, when nothing seems to be changing. You don't think you need optimism. You think that you need to stay focused on realism. What is real, what is necessary. Nose to the grindstone is kind of our worldly wisdom. Just stick there. But it's in a place like this, in desolation, where the needs of the belly might understandably outweigh anything else, that Isaiah knows that his people need to be fed hope even more than they need to be fed bread. Isaiah 51, 7 through 8 says this: "Listen to me, you who know righteousness, you people who have my teaching in your hearts. Do not fear the reproach of others, and do not be dismayed when they revile you. For the moth will eat them up like a garment, and the worm will eat them like wool. But my deliverance will be forever, and my salvation to all generations." He's reminding them their rule is temporary. Their control is temporary. Do not fear. Do not be dismayed. Why? Because even when everything visible is falling apart, God's deliverance is not. But Isaiah doesn't stop at quiet confidence. He also prays boldly and honestly, which I think is important. Isaiah 51:9, "Awake, awake, put on strength, O arm of the Lord. Awake as in days of old, the generations of long ago. Was it not you who cut Rahab to pieces, who pierced the dragon?" Isaiah reminds, he's bold enough to remind God what God has done. Don't you remember, God, you did these great things? And he calls on God to do it again. Living in Kairos time doesn't mean that we pretend that Chronos time is not happening. Our Chronos experience of the measurable is real. It's happening. Living in Kairos time means that we appreciate the moment, but that we're also praying for God to intervene in the Chronos moment. So what do we do with all of this? We're not living in ancient Israel. This book wasn't written to us. But we're not so different either. We spend a great portion of our life in Chronos time, watching the clock, spending time with the news feed, scrolling TikTok, deadlines, bills, doctor's appointments, news cycles that seem so awful. We measure our lives in days and weeks. We come up here for our birthday and we mark the Chronos time in our little house. Sometimes it feels like everything that matters is either running out or falling apart. It's in spaces like that, when we feel like that Isaiah's words can feel strange. They feel foreign. Swift deliverance, restoration. Look around even at our country, and we're nowhere near in the trouble that Israel was when he wrote these words. And yet swift deliverance, restoration, joy in the middle of all of this feels impossible. But I don't think the invitation has changed. I think Isaiah's words are still relevant to us today. Don't ignore Chronos time. It's real. Pray. Pray that God will intervene. Pray that God will enter the moment. Remind God of all God has done. Be bold enough to make those kind of prayers. And also, keep your eye on Kairos time. What are those moments where ordinary days that feel like they're not all that important in the moment, they slip away as your kid grows up, and it was just a moment, and your kid has grown. God's presence is in those moments. When you lose yourself at work because you get focused, and you lose sense of time because you're in it, you're in flow. That's Kairos time. In the midst of all of the stuff that's happening in Chronos, can you let yourself pay attention to those moments when time just disappears? I think that's where you'll find God.
It's happening all around you if you'll just start to notice. So keep going to work. We keep paying the bills. We sit in our waiting rooms. We learn to pray, "Awake, O arm of the Lord." Not because God actually needs awakening. God's already awake. But something in praying for God's arm to awake, of reminding God what God has done, is not really about God at all, but about what it does inside of us. That it reminds us of what God has done. That it reminds us that God is still moving. That it changes our perspective and focuses our attention on what God is already doing around you. In the midst of all of this, God is building stronger faith in each one of us, teaching us to trust the promises of Kairos time, with glimpses of it when we get lost at work or when we blink and our kids grow up, teaching us to trust by enduring the challenges of Chronos time, like stupid popcorn that takes forever, or the way our bodies begin to fail with age. Jennifer Yocum said this too: faith builds endurance through Chronos with the promise of Kairos. As we go into waiting worship, I have a couple queries for you to consider. The first one: where in my life am I measuring only Chronos time and missing the movement of God already present in Kairos? The second one: what feels delayed, broken, or beyond repair right now? And how might God be inviting me to see it differently? And the third: how am I being called to hold both? To be honest about what is hard and still remain open to the hope. As we spend time in waiting worship, I encourage you to listen to what God might be saying to you. And if you hear a message, consider, is this just for you? Or is this valuable for the whole congregation? As Quakers, we believe that God speaks through each one of us. We would love to hear your voice. You can stand and speak where you are. You could stay seated and speak loudly, or you can come up here and talk from the microphone, but we want to hear your voice. Thank you, friends.
Let's all stand and turn in our hymnals to page 389.
Friends, allow me to speak a blessing over you before you go. May you go in peace, aware of the time that presses and the presence that holds. May you notice the quiet work of God in moments that seem ordinary. And may you find the grace to live with patience in Chronos and hope in Kairos. Friends, go in peace. It's good to see you this morning.